Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and in this video, I want to talk to you about Boothill's signature Lightcone. Is it worth it to actually pull for him? I'll give you a TLDR. Now, if you are a player that really wants to build proper Boothill and you want him to do a lot of damage, this Lightcone probably is the closest thing to a must pull compared to a lot of other characters in the game. Unfortunately, he's a character that you probably need to go for his Lightcone in order to see his true potential pop-off. And the reason for that, and in this video of course, I'm going to give you some alternatives to his signature Lightcone, but there are very few that are actually usable versus this one, and I'll explain why in a bit, as well as I'll also explain whether this Lightcone is going to be versatile on any other unit that you have on your account as well. So if you're interested in any of that, stay tuned to find out. Now, the TLDR of all of this is he is a character that wants to scale off break effect, and there's very little other Lightcones in the game that gives you and supplies that, at least for a Hunt Lightcone currently we have in the game. For those of you who don't know, we already have a 5-star Herta shop Lightcone, so the hopium of there being like a free-to-play 5-star break effect Lightcone, not really available. We'll talk about some alternatives later on, but you can see his signature Lightcone here has 582 base attack, which is very similar to Zila's attack, slightly higher than cruising in the Stellar Sea. Attack generally matters more when the enemy is not broken. That's when he doesn't have his break damage scaling, but once the enemy is broken, that's when his whole entire break effect kit starts to kick in, for those of you who want a quick narrative. Increases wearer's break effect by 60%, break damage dealt by the wearer ignores 20% of the target's defense. Helping is basically him himself try to buff himself as much as possible, so good amounts of scaling, especially if you're struggling to hit very high amounts of break effect. Perhaps you do not have Runmei on your team, but most of you should be running at least with the Harmony Trailblazer to get at least 100% or more break effect from Harmony Trailblazer. When the rarest break effect in the battle is 150 or greater, generally you will be at this 150% threshold or greater, because 300% gives him additional crit damage. So you probably will be somewhere closer to 300% generally. Quite easy to hit this second line here, especially if this free 60% if you're running with Harmony Trailblazer already. Increases the speed by 12%. So some speed gain, good amounts of target defense resistance, break effect. Some of you that are looking at this Lightcone, but man, it doesn't seem that good. There's no crit, there's no massive damage buff here and there, but this plays very nicely into the kit, especially since how rare break effect is. Now, enough of this, let's just go ahead in the game engine and we can see that there are very few alternatives. So I'm here in the current version 2.2 first half Lightcones in the Hunt category, which is where Boothill is, and I can show you real quick. There is almost nearly no alternative for break effect. You can see Silence Remains is attack and crit. You have Swordplay, which is damage increase, which is probably one of the better alternatives that you can put on him. Subscribe for More here again has damage increase. This wearer increases by extra 24% when a wearer has max energy. So stuff like that. You have a few other Lightcones like this, doesn't even give break effect. You have this, which is crit and dispelling enemy buffs, which is more of a supportive Lightcone. You have Final Victor, which increases attack and crit rate, crit damage that you can see over there. So all of the 4-star Lightcones, none of them have break effect in them. Even Sleep Like the Dead here is also crit damage, nothing at all that has break effect. So if you were to ask me, the free-to-play alternatives for Boothill, you're really going down the crit route and hoping to stack a little bit of crit on this particular character, but this unit really wants a lot of break effect, which is very difficult to build, because as you can see, very few other sources, and it's one of the only characters in the game that I would say the disparity between not having the signature Lightcone and having the signature Lightcone is very severe. One of the examples of other characters was when Jingyuan was first released and you didn't have Before Dawn. Jingyuan with and without a signature Lightcone is very different. Of course, Before Dawn has a good amount of stats, and as we venture a little bit longer into the game, this one was also very versatile on a lot of characters that can use that crit damage. Unfortunately, Boothill's Lightcone is not very flexible, and let me just show you the other alternatives. But before that, let me just talk about some things that you could build if you were a free-to-play player. I think cruising the Stellar Sea gives you decent amount of attack, gives you some crit rate as well, gives you a bit of attack. It's just stats that you're effectively going for with some crit. Attack matters generally more when the enemy is not weakness broken. That's when you're still relying a lot on his multipliers. After the enemy is broken, then you want to hit as fast as you can. So perhaps you want to go on speed so you can hit more turns much quicker as well. One Lightcone that I think is possible, but again this is not free to play, is this one here, Return to Darkness. you have a chance of dispelling enemy buffs, allowing you to maybe stand off with the enemy and then remove their buffs at the same time while implanting weaknesses, turning him to a more versatile character. But then again, the damage doesn't scale as well compared to if you were having his signature Lightcone. Sword plays damage. The question remains whether this damage buff applies to his specific break effect damage. That's the thing that we definitely have to test out as well a little bit more, because if you have an 80% here, probably it might be pretty good if you can have this whole entire 80% on Boothill's break effect. That's the question that I'm thinking of at the top of my head that I want to know answers on. We'll definitely test it out once it goes live and everything is finalized. So other than that, of course, this one's not really that great. Subscribe for more. Doesn't really give too much. It's like damage increase here and there. Sleep Like the Dead here, the free-to-play Lightcone gives a bit of crit damage buffing. It has decent amount of stats when a wearer, the basic attack does not hit a crit, increases the crit chance by a little bit. Also usable, but then again you can see it's really very copium. You're just going for some stats that are trying to bridge in between whatever you don't have. And it is kind of worse in a sense if you think about, if you were pulling the Lightcone, you are really only pulling for Boothill, because if I go in here and just select, for example, the Hunt characters, you have the likes of Topaz and Nambi, doesn't want that Lightcone at all. Unless you're running some sort of break effect Topaz and Nambi. Maybe one day when you have a character that allows your characters to have the Boothill effect of when you hit broken enemies, deal more damage. If one day there's a character like that, that is not specifically super break, because I don't think the Lightcone buffs super break damage from Harmony Trailblazer. Maybe a 5-star, who knows. Other than that, no way Topaz and Nambi wants that Lightcone. Ice Break is very weak. Anton has no intention of running that. Even Zela also doesn't want to run that as well. Quantum Break isn't exactly the strongest in terms of DPS. As you can see, Doctor Ratio also doesn't really care too much about that. None of the characters really want. Maybe Shu Sang to some extent with a break effect build, since she attacks so fast. But then again, she has no break damage after the enemy is broken. If the Lightcone doesn't scale with Harmony Trailblazer, that is absolutely useless on every single one, because there's no way you can use the defense ignore. All you're using it is for a stat stick of 60% break effect, which is very easily obtainable from relics Lightcones if you're not min-maxing to push. So Lightcone is very niche, that's for sure. But the fact is, Boothill doesn't have too many other options. If you are a Boothill player, I highly recommend you going for E0S1 to see the max potential of him. Otherwise, the differences between you and a player that has his signature Lightcone likely will be more significant than other characters. Very reminiscent of the early days in Honkai Star Rail of a character like Jingyuan, whether you have Before Dawn or without. The catch is Before Dawn is quite versatile. This one is not so. Anyways guys, that's just my thoughts. If you appreciate such content, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. See you in the next video.